Welcome, Impactful Parents. It's time for the Impactful Parenting Podcast, where I give you parenting tips and resources to make you a more impactful parent to your school-age child. I am your host, Kristina Campos. Welcome, Impactful Parents. I'm glad you're here. It's Kristina, your favorite parenting coach. Today we're going to be talking about the favorite room inside of your house and why that room is so important and so influential to not only you, but your children and the family. So welcome to the Impactful Parent. My name is Kristina Campos. I'm founder of the Impactful Parent. I help parents just like you navigate all the challenges of parenting and get one step ahead of their child so they can catch the bad things before they start. But today's episode is a little bit more lighthearted. It's more of an insightful podcast where we are going to be exploring how our house affects our kids. And this is a really important episode because I think we're going to take it to an angle that maybe, hopefully, you've never really thought about before. So the big question I'm posing in this series, as this is the one that's get inside of my head and a completely unscripted and unedited podcast, and we're talking about your favorite room in your house. And let's start with yourself. And let's start with when you were growing up. So not the house that you cultivated and created and made perfect for you and your family, but more the house that you were just thrown into as a child. You didn't get to pick it. It was yours. This is where you grew up. Now, as I'm talking about the favorite room in my house and things, I get it. There are many people who never had that sense of belonging, that never had that favorite room in their house. And through that, it's like, how did that affect you? How did that affect not having that stability, that place? As we are talking, you're going to learn so much about some of the things that possibly you missed and where those holes might be in your own upbringing. That way you can fill those holes for your own children. So your favorite room in the house. I mean, you can picture it, right? When you were growing up, can you describe the layout and atmosphere of your favorite room in the house? For me, one of the favorite rooms in my house was actually the living room. Now, I know a lot of you are saying it was my bedroom, and we'll get to bedrooms first. But if you could pick something outside of your bedroom, what room in your home did you love? And for me, I liked the living room, all because of this special window. So you see, the house that my parents and had me raised in, it was an east-facing home. So every morning that sun would come up, go through the window, and warm up the living room. And man, did I love laying on the carpet in the middle of the floor, just like the dog. In fact, with the dog most of the time. And just lay there and bask in the sun and feel the warmth. It was my favorite. It was so relaxing. It was so grounding for me. It felt safe. And I loved it. It was literally my favorite thing to do Sunday mornings after church when I got to come home and finally just like relax as part of my week. And I push you to consider what specific moments or experiences make the room in your mind stand out from the others in your childhood home. You know, so what way did this stand out? For me, it was the window. The window did everything for this room. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been my favorite room. I needed the window and the sun to come through to bask in it in order for this to be a really special place. So, do you have any specific memories or experiences in the room that you love that's outside of your bedroom, okay, in the house that you grew up? These are fascinating questions to not only think about, but then what would your kids say? And that would be the next step. I want you to think about yourself first. I want you to feel that nostalgia. I want you to go back and think, this is what I had or this is what I was lacking throughout this podcast. But the second step after you feel those feelings and examine that is, what would your kids say about your home now? The home that you cultivated. Do you have those safe spaces in your room? So we're going to plant that seed in the back of our brain as we listen today. And I'll ask, how did spending time in this room influence your daily routine and activities growing up? For me, man, that room just grounded me, right? It calmed my nerves. It was literally my Sunday morning relaxation, reset, and getaway. And I hope that I'm providing that for one of my kids. So in my second step, where in my home am I doing that? Where am I in my home? Can my kids outside of their bedroom feel like they can just come and lay down and decompress, get grounded, not feel bugged or annoyed by all the other people in the household? Do I provide that? And the filling in the blanks will be how I move after this podcast to make me a better parent. So think about that. How did spending time in that room influence you? Were there any particular objects or decorations in this room that maybe hold special meaning or nostalgia for you? Now for me, I'm going to move that question now into the bedroom. As most of you would probably say, is your most prized and favorite room in the house, right? Because it was ours. If you were lucky enough to have your own room, ta-da! You got to have these particular objects and decorations in your room. And I'm sure they held special meaning. For me, the nostalgia part was the massive posters I had that mocked as wallpaper. Every inch from teen magazines that I had bought and pulled out. Yes, I'm talking about from ages about, 10, 12, till probably about 14 years old. I was engulfed in the teen magazine scene. Kind of shows my age a little bit, but yes. Huge New Kids on the Block fan at the time. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I have to admit that I liked a boy band, but I did back then. And the nostalgia is overwhelming when I consider my room and some of the things inside. So what about you? How can you describe that? How did the design or aesthetic of the room that you grew up in reflect your personality, your interests during your childhood? Was it a mirror of who you were? Was it another outlet of expression? I know for me, it was. I was given the agency to put up 1 million posters from Teen Beat magazine and so forth. And I was able to create this room that I loved staring up at all the posters. And yeah, it did reflect my personality at the time. Yeah, it did reflect my interests. And now part 2, do I give that to my kids? Do I allow them to express themselves in their room the way that they choose, the way that they want? Or do I try to control it? Even, asking my kids, don't put this on the room because you're going to, up on the wall because you're going to create holes. And then I'm going to have to patch them. Don't use this on the wall because of that. Or what about this bedding? Yeah, it matters. Are you giving your child agency into their room? And I'm not saying you have to give them 100% agency, but a lot of it might do good for their soul. Now, were there any significant events or moments that took place in your favorite room, whether it's the living room like me or your bedroom, that have you, that you've just kept? Any moments it just stayed with you into your adulthood? And again, yeah, I remember the slumber parties I had in that living room, the birthday parties that, we stayed up all night long and we played like ridiculously 12-year-olds, with our Ouija boards and making ourselves scared on purpose with with looking in the mirror and chanting stupid things. If you're a girl and you're about my age, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We did it at those slumber parties. We all did it. Isn't that crazy? Without the internet and without social media, we all did the same thing. We all knew these slumber party activities. And I have those fond memories in that living room still. And then looking back, what do you think your favorite room in the house when growing up reveals about your past, about your present, about your future self? You know, how did your room change over time? There's so many things that happen with this. Now, let's talk a little bit about the science. So I just wanted to get you pondering. But now, room really does matter. So feng shui, if I'm saying it correctly, it can really impact your children. And it does it in several ways. The first thing that feng shui does for your child, and I mean throughout their house, your house, and throughout their bedroom, it affects them by health and well-being. What do I mean by that? Okay, well, the proper feng shui may create a supportive and nurturing environment that contributes to your child's physical health and emotional well-being. This is proven. Okay, these are scientific things that I'm telling you right now that you can look up, and and these things are true. It could actually improve their physical and emotional well-being. Now, you can take this in a couple different directions. For me, I'm just going to mention that, a massive room with no organization and it's all over the place, it affects your kids. It affects who you are. It affects your mental state. On the other hand of that, too spotless, too germ-free, too everything in its place and nothing can be out of place. How does that affect mental health? So obviously, our goal as parents is somewhere in the middle. Another second thing that feng shui can do for your child is focus and concentration. A well-organized and clutter-free space in line with feng shui principles can actually help children concentrate better, focus on schoolwork, and be more productive. So I ask you then, what does the area where your children do homework look like? Is it organized? Is it messy? Is it loud? Is it distracting? Is it in their room? Is it private? Is it in the public area? There's so many other podcasts you can go back and look at that I've talked about with the importance of where your child does homework, but just got to reiterate it again, right here. It matters. The third thing that feng shui does to influence your child is it gives them emotional balance. Feng shui aims to create harmony in the environment, which can positively influence a child's emotional state, right? And their relationships with family members and peers. Those are all important to note. It also affects your child through sleep because creating a calming and balanced bedroom, according to feng shui principles, can potentially improve a child's sleep quality. And that's pretty crucial for their overall health and development. And feng shui also influences your child through stress reduction. A feng shui aligned space can reduce environmental stressors and create a sense of calm, which can be beneficial for children, especially in today's really fast-paced world where there's so much going on. Now, ultimately, the impact of feng shui on children can vary based on individual preferences, of course, and their sensitivities. But creating that supportive, harmonious living environment can generally be beneficial for the development and well-being. So let's get into this a little bit deeper. In what ways do you believe your child's favorite room reflects their personality, their interests, or their emotional needs in your home? What does it do? Have you ever noticed your child's behavior or mood change when they're in their favorite room compared to the other spaces in the house? Gosh, I know I have. I have a few kids that are just completely attached to the bedroom. And I also have a few kids, because I have four children in total, that don't need that refuge. But the two that do, man, do they need it. Their mood does change. And when I enter their space, there's also a mood change. I'm not saying I'm invading, but once I enter their little domain, which, yes, I get there's parents out here arguing, hey, that's your house and it's technically your room and all things. And I completely agree with you. But, I rent this space out to my children in my brain, for the generous price of nothing until they're 18, in which case, after that, it becomes a guest bedroom. But it does affect how when I enter their room, how it does affect them. It affects all of it, whether I'm barging in, whether I'm knocking, whether I'm being respectful, whether I'm trying to stay out, or whether I'm making myself go in, or whether I want it clean. All of this affects my kids' moods. And why? You're like, why do they take it so personally? Yeah, it's their personal space. It's their alone space. It's really their sacred space. And yeah, I remember that feeling of having it sacred when I was a kid. So now that I'm a parent, I keep reminding myself, no, I can't forget. This is really special for my child. This area is what they consider theirs. No, they don't see it as mine, even though, yes, I own my home and it is technically my house and my domain. They don't see it like that because it's the only thing they've ever known. It's the only thing that's been really given to them and saying, this is yours until we move. But for, the lifetime of this home, take care of it. Sometimes they take care of it. Sometimes they don't. Oh my gosh, right? It's kids. But have you made any specific efforts to create a nurturing and supporting environment in your child's favorite room? Even if it's theirs, even if it's their bedroom. What impact have you observed on your child when you've made these special efforts, like giving them bedding that they really love, even changing their bedding? Because how excited do they get when they get to throw away the Elmo or give it away? Hopefully they're donating that, but throwing away the Elmo and now getting something a little bit more mature. Don't you see your child proud, happy, maybe excited for the new beginning? How it reflects their new personality. They're growing. Do you make those special efforts? Do you buy them posters of their favorite characters for Christmas? Do you allow them to even hang up anything on their walls? Or do you have a bedroom for your child that's mandated by color and what they can have in there? Are they always mandated that it has to look a certain way, aka spotlessly clean? How do you think your own childhood experiences and connection to your favorite room influence the way you approach creating a living space for your own children? Right? And this goes back to one of those original questions I asked in the beginning. For those of you listening and you didn't have that space because maybe your family was in the military and you moved quite often, or maybe you had to share a space with several siblings or even other people and just never felt like yours. How does that childhood experience affect you now? And how you create a space for your own child or children? Or when you're thinking about, the posters and all the things that I did for my room. Yeah, I let my kids do it. I let my kids put holes in the wall. Probably shouldn't. I'm going to regret it someday when I have to patch them all. But it was so important to me that I am passing that down to my child. And so, yeah, my childhood experience and that connection to my own favorite room influences my parenting. What challenges have you faced in trying to accommodate your child's preferences and needs that you just didn't have with your own room? Maybe growing up, there could be challenges there. It's sometimes hard, especially if we were lacking, to give fully to our children. Sometimes we're just like, they're fine. They're fine. I did without. They'll be fine too without. So there are challenges that you can face when you're thinking about today's episode. And I want you to tell you that's just completely normal. The big idea here is that you're recognizing it. You're recognizing how your own childhood has now influenced your parenting and how you can fill those holes in that safe space. Because as we round out this episode, that's what's important here. I wanted to bring it up that bedroom, that safe space in your house, even if it's just like a tent, maybe, a tent or a corner, a little book area, a special place on the couch, that space is more important to kids than I think parents realize, because we forget. We forget that sense of belonging, that sense of emotional well-being and more over than anything else, that sense of security that we had in that spot, in that place that we have all these fond memories of, in that room. And it does make a difference. It is worth your time as a parent to cultivate that safe space for your child. It is important as a parent to consider the emotional connection that your child has to certain places in your home. Even if it's like the chair at the dinner table where they always sit and always do their homework and always read a book. And then some days we're like, can you just sit over there? Yeah. Could your child sit over there? Yeah, they can. And should they? Maybe, depending on the circumstances. Yeah, they may need to be flexible. But that doesn't mean that we as parents should forget about how that might make our child feel. To let somebody else share their special space. To take it maybe from them in certain cases. Or for us to even take it away. What that feels like. How deep it actually cuts. And really, that's the point of today's episode. To remember some things that maybe we've forgotten. And I hope that you kind of look at those questions, pose those questions that I did, and think about that for your child. How are you doing in this space of parenting? Are you giving your child that safe space? Are you letting them express themselves? Talk to them. Find out if you're not sure. And more than anything, just by listening to this today and thinking about it, you are being a more impactful parent. Have a great day, you guys. I'll see you next episode.
Thank you for listening today. Remember to subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And don't forget, the Impactful Parenting Podcast is an extension of the Impactful Parent community. Go to the Impactful Parent website and download the free Impactful Parent app so you don't miss a parenting tip that can help you and your family. Thanks for listening today. So go to theimpactfulparent.com and see you next episode.